All right, so I'm Unseen Warfare, and I'm here to present a video about Elder Savvas of Mount Athos. And I thought I'd read from this article I pulled up, and this is my first time really kind of getting this working. So it's kind of practice, but I also wanted to read this article. So it's from Subdeacon Nectarius. He posted this May 15th, 2024. And I remember probably around that time, like this article had been going around. This was probably something that you could probably find in a couple places, maybe on archive.com or, I think Esfig Minnow might have posted this article at one time from this Elder Savvas of Mount Athos. And from what I understand, this Elder Savvas was this elder who was with the EP, with the Ecumenical Patriarchate, and he ended up leaving. And his reasons for leaving, he lays out in the letter, and there was these monks, a part of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, that were sort of coming after him and asking him why he left and giving him all these reasons why he shouldn't have left, and that he was a traitor and all this kind of stuff. And his response is really important because it kind of breaks down kind of the topic we covered last week, which was, or my last video rather, which was discernment. And from what I could see, Elder Savvas was a very discerning person, and we can learn a lot from him. So I'm going to start with this article. It says, Elder Savvas of Mount Athos to Father Nicodemus, a letter of confession against the, quote, resist from within heresy, by Elder Savvas Cherkakis, I guess, something like that. The respected Elder Father Savvas had followed the policy of the 19 ruling monasteries of Mount Athos, which believed, as do many people, that we must make concessions and accommodations in matters of faith for a period of time. Since he was virtuous, with a sincere and good intention, the fathers who have only recently come to Mount Athos, the so-called New Holy Mountain Fathers, who hold communion with the ecumenists and commemorate the ecumenical patriarchate, would visit the elder frequently. They would hold him up as an example to their disciples, and would say that if the zealot, dissent, and protest were good, would not the virtuous Father Savvas belong to it? However, when the ecumenical patriarch Demetrios celebrated with the Pope of Rome in December of 1987, the elder roused himself. His soul could not bear to be found in such a blatantly ecumenistic church, along with other ascetics. He protested and separated himself from all those other fathers of Mount Athos who followed the 19 monasteries. He would not go to services in any of those 19 or any of the Kilias or Motokia which followed them. All the commemorators were in an uproar from monastery and Kilion, and many ran to persuade the elder, but the frequent visits, which became burdensome, were to no avail. Excuse me. So let's scroll down on this article for you, everybody. So it says, finally, the elder was belonged to another answer in writing one monk who troubled him frequently, thereby answering all the other troubling him, for they were well organized and committed to using every means to draw the elder out of orthodoxy into the embrace of hellish ecumenism. Below is the text of the elder's letter of confession. The Kilion of St. Nicholas, Capsala, August 13th, 1991. Dear Father Nicodemus, of Logiite, which I believe means bless, or something like that. During your visit to Archelion a few days ago, you repeated your unorthodox dogmatic pronouncements that we are outside the church because we do not commemorate Patriarch Demetrius. You also made some other statements as well, for which cause we feel constrained to write the following for your further instruction. Since the evidence and the refutations we tended during our conversation destroyed your peace and made you angry, in the sayings of the Desert Fathers, it is written that when the Abba Agathon was asked if he were proud, a fornicator, and a heretic, he answered that he confirmed the first two accusations, for it was profitable for his soul to do so, but not that he was a heretic, for that signifies separation from God. According to you, and according to all the monasteries of Mount Athos as well, except for the monastery of Esphigmenou, the seat of Prophet Elias, and many zealot fathers, we are deceived in our schismatics. You find it difficult to admit that the Patriarchate of Constantinople is preaching heresy, because you would be required to admit that your holding communion with these wolves and not shepherds is worthy of condemnation, or you would have to cease following them according to the command of all the holy fathers and councils. Um, okay, so you attempt to justify the Phanar, but their words and actions show you to be in error. In vain do you invoke the opinion of Father Paisios and others who are indulgent with present conditions and make concessions that they deal with it by economia. But the time comes, supposedly, when Demetrios shall enter into communion with the Pope, as you said. You will separate yourselves for whatever is not in accord with the teachings of the Holy Fathers and Councils. You greatly deceive yourselves. As for the admonitions to which you refer, whether of Elder Paisios, or of your neighbor Papa Isaac, or of anyone else, which maintain that Patriarch Demetrios rightly divides the word of truth, how can you expect us to accept them as being pleasing to God, when they are completely contrary to Orthodox teaching? Since the truth is betrayed, should it not be called iniquity rather than economia, concession, accommodation, or indulgence? You maintain your stance because Elder Paisios said, quote, Demetrius is misled by the hierarchs around him to do that which he does not want, and quote, if we stop commemorating, we will be outside the church, and much more, to which can be applied the words of Saint John Chrysostom, quote, all their words are foolishness, and the tales of foolish children. These words of theirs are the fruit of a new theology, which the Phanar used in the notorious Encyclical of 1920 by calling heretics, quote, fellow heirs of the grace of God. You bring forward the words of Saint John Chrysostom, quote, not even the blood of martyrdom blots out schism, and of Saint Ignatius the God-bearer, quote, let nothing be enacted without the bishop. You conclude that when we separate ourselves from our bishop, we are outside the church. The saints made these true pronouncements, however, in a time of orthodoxy and church sincerity. Today, when the hurricane of the ecumenist pan heresy sweeps away even the elect, the words of the same saints have force. Quote, if your bishop be a heretic, or if your bishop be heretical, flee, 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 as from fire and a serpent. Saint John Chrysostom. Quote, if thy bishop should teach anything outside of the appointed order, even if he lives in chastity, or if he works signs, or if he prophesies, let him be unto thee as a wolf in sheep's clothing, for he works the destruction of souls. If Demetrius rightly divided the words of truth, you would have been justified in your use of those quotations you took from the two saints, but now you edit the Father's writing to your taste in order to justify your guilt for being a fellow traveler of Demetrius, Parthenios of Alexandria, Icavos of America, and Stylianos Archianakis of Australia. All of these and many of the quotations from the holy councils and saints, are they not enough for you? Or do you fear perhaps being cast out of the synagogue of the heretics? The fact that the other patriarchates hold communion with Phanar is not really important. What is important is who follows the footsteps of the saints and is with the truth. Parthenios, Patriarch of Alexandria, said that he recognizes Mohammed as an apostle who worked for the kingdom of God, and other such blasphemies which you know. There is no need for us to write again. The heresies of Icavos, Cocuzis of America, Stylianos Archianakis of Australia. I'm butchering the Greek, but you know. You are in communion with these men as though they supposedly rightly divided the word of truth, who is going to condemn this Icavus, Cuscusis, and Parthenios, or the committee of Phanarites under Bartholomew, which has been, quote, investigating for 2 years now whether Harcianacus is a heretic? Do you not understand that they do not want to pronounce a verdict? The Phanar promised the delegation of 3 abbots from Mount Athos that they would retract and correct Patriarch Demetrios' statement to the United Press about receiving communion from the Latins, that they would replace Stalianos Harcianakis as president of the Commission for Theological Dialogue, etc. Has anything been corrected to this day? Or do you believe that we have no responsibility or guilt and may remain in communion because Elder Paisios shamefully says that the declarations and actions of Demetrius are not contrary to our doctrines and do not violate the truth? History repeats itself. St. Theodore the Studite, St. Maximus the Confessor, and many other Christians who did not follow the hierarchy, which at Sunday times preached heresy, were all called schismatics by that hierarchy. Although St. Gerasimos of the Jordan was served by a lion and was a wonder worker, he was in error because he would not accept the Fourth Ecumenical Council, drawing along with him thousands of monks in Palestine, until he was corrected by St. Euthemios the Great and repented. You could ask, quote, could Elder Paisios and the 70 bishops uh, You could ask, could Elder Paisios and the 70 bishops of the state church of Greece be in error? Do you want God to force them to confess him? At the Iconoclast Council 754 in the reign of Copronymus, we read in the minutes that fearsome acclamation of the 338 bishops present at the council. Quote, long live the king, the icons are idols and should either be destroyed or hung high so that they might not be venerated. Do you find it hard to believe that 70 bishops can be deceived today, when, as you see, so many were deceived then? Nowadays, monks desire to gain mitres, abbatial staffs, while observing only a nominal confession of faith, that is, protesting somewhat but not stopping the commemoration of the Patriarch, and tolerating all the innovations to the gospel introduced by Demetrios, Acavos, Parthenios, and those like them. St. Theodore the Studite, however, writes that the work of the monk is not to tolerate even the least innovation in the gospel of Christ. At the concelebration in Rome, Demetrios did not receive the host from the Pope in order to avoid hostile reactions from, quote, conservatives. However, there in Rome, he did subscribe to the doctrine that the Latins possessed the mysteries of the Church, and he continues to do so. Is that not enough? When did the saints and Christians of any century in which a heresy was widely preached ever react as do you, who continue to commemorate Demetrios? What precedent have you found in the history of the Church so you can say you are following it? If you are sons of the saints, that is, imitators and followers of the saints, quote, ye would have done the works of Abraham, as the Gospel says in the time of Patriarch Becos. The fathers of Mount Athos stopped commemorating him, even though he had not been deposed by a council, and because they remained steadfast in their adherence to the precepts of the fathers, that is, had no communion with those who depart from the Orthodox faith, Christ granted them the martyr's crown. As for those who concelebrated with the commemorators of the Latin-minded, quote, official Patriarch Becus, their corpses are found to this day, as well known, swollen, stinking, and decomposed, to be an example to all. You told us that if Demetrius does not go to confession for the things that he has done, he will be damned. You are now admitting that you are following a man who is damning himself by what he is doing. For him to be damning himself means that he is doing the work of the devil. Consequently, you yourself admit that you have the devil as a fellow traveler. Are you serious, Father Nicodemus, or are you jesting? If Athenagoras has, quote, repented and confessed his sin shortly before he died, then would he be saved? Show me even one patristic witness which justifies remaining in a church that preaches heresy, as that of the, quote, meek and quiet leader of orthodoxy, Demetrios. Would such an adherence Would such an obedience to a hierarchy that does not rightly divide the word of truth sanctify us? If you do not wish to admit that the monastery of Esphigmeno and so many zealot fathers are worthy of honor according to the 15th canon of the First and Second Council, at least be silent, and do not blaspheme by saying that they are schismatics and outside the church. You ignore the existence of the testament of Saint Mark of Ephesus, who did not want the Latin-minded even to come to his funeral. He says, first study, then make pronouncements. According to your way of thinking, Saint Mark of Ephesus, Saint Maximus the Confessor, and a host of others who did not hold communion with heretics or outside the church. Do you see where your, quote, new theology leads? Who have ever thought that the Fathers of the Holy Mountain would have as their Bible the book The Two Extremes by Father Epaphanios Theodoropoulos? You recommend making protests like those recommended on pages 19 and 22 of that book. Protest, according to ecumenists, quote, sacred canons which are not applicable in our times because they are lacking in love. He also describes Athenagoras, quote, as having a demonic love. Nevertheless, he remained in communion with those who have a, quote, a demonic love, marvelous consistency. He says, we saw similar protests on the occasion when the representative of the monastery of Gregoro asked that it be recorded in the decision of the sacred community that if the chief secretary were sent to Australia, he would not come celebrate there. The chief secretary finally did not go, but Father Basil, abbot of Stravnakita, ignoring the decision of all the other monasteries, sent Father Tychon to, quote, help Archbishop Stalanos Harkianakos. I don't know. When Father Tychon, maybe that's another way to say it, I guess. Or I was saying it wrong. Tychon returned. He sent to the festival of the Kilian of Boraziri. There, the representatives of the monastery of Gregor, Father Athanasios, concelebrated with Father Tychon and the rest. No commentary is needed. Okay. Father Epaphanios Theodopoulos was silenced when they refuted his errors some 20 years ago. But you, with the same untheological arguments, want to justify your communion with patriarchs who preach heresy, quote, with bared head, having a demonic love for heretics while persecuting the genuinely Orthodox, and so emulating Patriarch Bacchus, the Emperor Copronymus, and all those like them. When you chant them many years and commemorate them, it is the same as if you said, quote, you are sound in the faith, and obedience, honor, and commemoration are due to you. You do not help them understand that they are walking upon an evil path. Whereas if you had broken communion with them, perhaps they would have pangs of conscience and would search for the truth. Your guilt for your reprehensible silence, which St. Gregory Palamas calls a third kind of atheism, grows day by day in spite of your so-called protests. When the Latin-minded were coming here during the Patriarchate of Bacchus to enforce the union with the Latins, Our Lady, the Virgin Mother, the guardian of the Holy Mount Athos, spoke herself, saying, quote, the enemies of my son and me are coming. Last year, when the successor of Bacchus, Demetrios, quote, the leader of Orthodoxy, arrived, he found the holy mountain swathed in black for 2 weeks of continuous fires. He that hath a ear heareth the voices of the holy Theotokos. May you find the path of good disagreement, as Saint Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain teaches in his interpretation of the 14th epistle of St. Paul, saying, if he is evil in faith, that he believes heretical and blasphemous doctrines, flee from him, though he be an angel from heaven. Elder Savvas, an unmonastic but Orthodox monk, with his Orthodox confession, the ever-memorable elder fell asleep in the Lord, of his Kilian in October of 1991. The original publication is from the Holy Agathangelos of Mount Athos. Okay. So that was really kind of like just a test to see if I could get this thing working and maybe read something. So that was cool. Um, I might have something else to go to about Elder Savvas. I think I have something else. Let's see. Okay. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. All right. I mean, we could read something else from his website if we wanted to. Go to something else. Let's see. Yeah, I don't have this book yet. I think I should probably get that soon or something. But I exited that out. Oops. Okay. Oh, I did it again. All right. Okay, read this. One moment. I'll pull it up somewhere else. Also read it on. All right. Okay. We're going to go to this article here. Murdered by New Calendar Innovators. The Martyrdom of St. Catherine of Attica. This, he published this November 28, 2025. The original publication November 15th, such 28th, 1927. Originally published by Thai Patria Periodical. Okay. So it says the holy new martyr Catherine Rutiz was born in 1900 in a small Greek village called Mandra in Attica, Greece, to poor but pious parents. Like her parents, John and Maria Pepys, Catherine was a pious child, offering to help family and neighbors in any way possible. At the age of 22, Catherine Pepys married Constantine Rutiz from the same village. Christ gave them two children, Christos and Irene. Okay. So the devout Rutiz family joined the resistance of the true Orthodox Christians, participating in all the services and public demonstrations for their faith, even when this was perilous, all for the sake of the traditions of the Holy Fathers. On the eve of the feast of the heavenly powers on November 7, 1927, some pious women from Mondrian, together with the brave Catherine, had cleaned the church and prepared it so that nothing was lacking for the awaited festival. They had also done everything that they could to find a faithful priest, faithful to the calendar of the fathers. For at that time such few clergymen were in the great demand by the faithful. The faithful at Mandra had therefore welcomed Father Christopher Pasadillas, Pacelidis, Pacelidis, I don't know, with enthusiasm. I'm just going to call him Father Christopher P, I guess. Vespers started quietly and in peace, but at the beginning of the Matins, the police had appeared with evil intent and surrounded the church. What was it that the police so insistently wanted? They were only obeying the orders of the schismatic Archbishop of Athens, Chrysostomus Papadopoulos. namely to arrest the priest and scatter the quote mob of the faithful. The parents of Catherine Ortiz have attested to the fact that after Vespers, her husband suggested that they go home because he feared an incident, but this was impossible for Catherine to stay at home. When Catherine's sister told her of the increased dangers that the faithful were facing in the church, besieged by the police, she left home and rushed in among the combatants. Uh, Hold on 1 second. Okay. When Catherine's sister told her of the increased dangers the faithful were facing in the church, besieged by the police, she left home, rushed in among the combatants. Catherine Ortiz literally ran to her martyrdom. The police then struck the doors with their rifle butts, trying to knock them down. They broke the window panes, but the faithful continued to pray inside. It was nearly dawn. Inside the church, most of the faithful received Holy Communion and were about to take Father Christopher, the priest, out safely so that he could rest in a villager's house. The faithful had just received all the strength they needed, Holy Communion, to face the police who surrounded the church outside. A living wall of pious women surrounded the endangered priest. The police sprung on them and, like uh, rapacious wolves, I don't know, something about wolves, demanding the women to surrender the priest into their hands. Quote, "You arrest our priests only over our dead bodies." One of the courageous women cried out. Whose voice was it that cried out with such holy boldness? It was none other than the voice of the young mother of the two children, Catherine Pepes Rotis. The police, failing to break through the human cordon, started to shoot with their rifles to frighten the faithful. A few faithful moved away, but the human wall remained intact around the priest. They were taken aback by the savagery of the police. A bullet struck the ever memorable Angelikiki Katsarelis in the temple. Meanwhile, Catherine Ortiz did not flinch, courageously denouncing the forces of the schismatic new calendars. But then the holy new martyr and mother of the two young children saw a policeman raise his rifle butt to strike the priest. Father Christopher Palsalidis, without hesitation, Catherine Ortiz covered Father Christopher with her body and received the mortal blow to the back of her head. Catherine fell, staining the floor of the church with the blood of her martyrdom. Again, Christ's holy blood was shed again, filling up the afflictions of himself in the flesh of the holy new martyr, Catherine Ortiz, as Catherine whispered, quote, Most Holy Theotokos. The anxious, weeping, pious women took up Catherine's bloodied body and rushed her to Annunciation Hospital in Athens. The pious Angeliki was also taken at the same time and thankfully released after a few days. Catherine, motionless upon her hospital bed, suffered enormously for 7 days, unable to speak. Catherine gestured for a paper and pencil to write a note to her husband, to commend to his care their two little children, one 4 years old and the other only a few months old. On November 15th, 1927, according to the old calendar, that Catherine shed her martyric blood for, on the first day of the Nativity fast, Catherine Pepes Ruiz gave her martyric soul into the hands of her Master Christ, who crowned her. Catherine was no ordinary funeral, but a procession of thousands of faithful, also willing to resist unto blood. The trampling by the New Calendar Greeks upon the traditions of the Holy Fathers. Saint Catherine of Mandra was officially glorified as a saint by the Holy Synod of the Church of the Genuine Orthodox Christians on September 6th, 19th, 2014. Um, yeah, it's kind of funny, just like kind of thinking about that article there. Like, you see, I guess like the new calendar is to undermine and try to downplay the importance of the change of the calendar. And it's like we have young mothers who are willing to shed their blood to protect the priest and protect the traditions of the church. And it's a shame that that's not, I guess, respected to an extent. I don't know what that noise is. But I appreciate everybody that kind of stopped by. This is just a short test stream, so I appreciate it. Later.